Hello everyone and welcome back to Push Square. My name is Aidan and I'm here today to talk about the PSVR2, which just passed its second anniversary. Today I want to talk about the features, the games, the support or lack thereof to answer that big old question of whether the PSVR2 is worth your time and money in 2025. So let's get into it. To start off with the basics, the PSVR2 launched on February 22nd, 2023 with a retail price of £530 here in the UK. Now that is a lot of money, but it has intermittently dropped down to roughly £320 with various deals across those 2 years. But is the high price entirely unwarranted? Well, Sony is certainly going for a higher end product with some of its baseline features. For one, the PSVR2 has 4K OLED panels, 2K per eye, with eye tracking and foveated rendering support. That means that the PSVR2 has some of the sharpest and most vibrant visuals in the VR format. Immersion is also another big part of the PSVR2, with haptic feedback and adaptive triggers not just in the Sense controller but also on the headset itself, which can be incredibly effective. Now I would choose to play a game on PS5 over other platforms purely for the haptics, and it's the same thing here on the PSVR2. On top of all of that though, you've got this far improved tracking system with tracking camera sensors on the front of the visor, meaning you can pretty much move around freely as long as you're in a well lit space. Although not entirely freely, because the PSVR2 is powered by a single cable running from the back of the headset to the front of your PS5. Now you can't use the PSVR2 without the PS5, with the PS5 doing a bulk of the processing. Now this is beneficial from the standpoint of you don't need to charge the headset, and obviously it allows for much greater graphical power and more AAA experiences like Resident Evil 4. But at the same time, it's very liberating to play VR wirelessly like on the Meta Quest 3, and the cable itself is probably my biggest cause for concern with this product. After 2 years, my cable is all coiled up and twisted. Now I'm not overly precious about how I store this, but I'm not just ramming it in a cupboard, so I would imagine that a lot of people are in a similar situation, and this does mean that there's less maneuverability with the cable. You always have a bit of a fear at the back of your mind that you're going to pull your PlayStation off the cabinet, or even worse, damage the USB-C or the wire in some other way. Now the wire is repairable and replaceable to some extent, but it's a pretty involved process, and there's no like official easy let's just switch that cable out and put in a new one. It's not anything like that. So for a lot of people, if you damage this, I suspect it would be the end of their VR journey. I do want to mention comfortability though, because that's really where you're going to feel a lot of the money with this product over other ones like the Meta Quest 3. The PSVR2 has a really plush headband with cushioning on both the front and back, and a tightening dial that allows you to really set the right tightness on it, so it's both stable, it never feels like it will fall off, and it's also incredibly comfortable, easy to wear for hours on end. The headset itself isn't actually that heavy, obviously a perk of, again, using the PS5 for a lot of the processing. And then the Sense controllers, a little bit funny to get on, especially if you've got the visor on already. But once they are on, they're incredibly comfortable to hold and really easy to navigate. All the buttons just feel like they're in the right place. Now obviously that's a lot of technical talk, but what about the games? Now there is a bit of a rhetoric going about that the PSVR2 doesn't have any games, which I'll get into, but I don't really fully subscribe to that, because I think there are so many great experiences currently available in the PSVR2 library. I mean, talking about some of my personal favourites, you have PSVR upgrades like Beat Saber, Pistol Whip and Tetris Connected. You've got newer titles like Synapse, Metro Awakening, Arizona Sunshine 2, Alien Rogue Incursion just recently as well. There are plenty of great experiences within the library that I don't think enough people give credit towards. Now of course you have the big exclusive titles like Horizon Call of the Mountain, Gran Turismo 7, Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil 4. These are exclusive to the PSVR2 platform and for some people might be console sellers. The problem is those are about the only exclusive experiences we've had since the launch of the PSVR2, and when we talk about first party titles, that's pretty much non-existent at this rate. Outside of Call of the Mountain and GT7, we also did have Rush of Blood, which really didn't review well, and Firewall Ultra, which flopped so hard it actually killed the studio that developed it. Sony has shown time and time again that it's not really willing to fully support the product that it's selling you, which is incredibly disappointing, but at the same time, the sales numbers just don't seem to be there to warrant having AAA experiences from their IP like The Last of Us, Spider-Man, God of War. Even a franchise like Astrobot, which had the brilliant Astrobot Rescue Mission on PSVR, didn't see any kind of VR follow-up with the 2024 Game of the Year winning Astrobot. These are the types of things that I think a lot of people really expected, especially with Horizon getting such a blowout experience on launch, but since then it's just been radio silence when it comes to those first party titles. But again, I do want to say that doesn't mean that there's nothing there. Third party titles have been getting a lot of really slow but steady releases across the last couple of years on the PSVR2. I mean, within the last year and a bit, we've had Arizona Sunshine 2, Phasmophobia, Metro Awakening, Behemoth, which I didn't like, but some people seem to, Alien Rogue Incursion as well. There's some really worthwhile experiences, and then even looking ahead to this year, we've got things like Zombie Army 4 VR, The Midnight Walk, and Hitman World of Assassination. And then there's that Wanderer, the Fragments of Fate remake as well. So it's not like there's nothing coming out and nothing to look forward to. That just isn't really the case. It's just not the big hitters that I think a lot of people associate with Sony. In addition to this though, there's some really great indie titles. Obviously I mentioned Phasmophobia, but also one of my personal favorites is a game like Walkabout Mini Golf. Not something that you would necessarily buy the PSVR2 for, but a lot of fun nonetheless. And there's plenty of these smaller experiences that are really worth checking out. I think it's really hard to gauge the interest that you would have in VR without properly trying it, so there's many games out there that you might watch a trailer for and flat screen and think, that looks a bit rubbish, it's not really my thing, graphics aren't that great, but playing them is an entirely different experience. It's like watching a concert and a video and thinking, yeah, that looks alright, but when you're there, you feel the atmosphere, you're like there in the moment, and it's kind of what VR is like, for me at least. In addition to that though, there's also plenty of games with VR components to otherwise flat screen games, meaning that if you were to pick up a PSVR 2, you may already have access to some games like No Man's Sky, Humanity, like I mentioned, the RE games, and then Gran Turismo 7. Those are like fairly meaty games that you may already own flat screen, and now you've given it a new lease of life with the PSVR 2. So when it comes to the games, I think, yeah, there's issues regarding support and I suppose a form of transparency from Sony as to whether this is something you should really be committing your time to. It never really brings it across like that. But there are quietly impressive games being added to its lineup that I don't think should be completely written off. Ultimately though, bringing that together, do I think it's worth your time and money to buy a PSVR 2 in 2025? For me personally, it is a device that can spend months at a time sitting in the cupboard. I won't lie about that. I don't think though that that's something specific to the VR itself. You know, sometimes I'll go all in multiplayer games, and then other times I'm ditching that, and right now all I'm playing is Dark Souls 3. So it's kind of a similar thing where sometimes I'm really in the mood for VR and sometimes I'm not. Just before Christmas I had Metro, straight into Behemoth, straight into Alien Rogue Incursion, and it felt like I was playing it all the time and I was really into it at that point. And then since then it's been in the cupboard for a couple of months, and now I'm like talking about how new features are coming to Phasmophobia. That means me and my friends are going to boot that back up again. So I think it's like anything, it's going to be something that has like peaks and troughs when it comes to how much you play it. Like I said, I think is really going to come down to how much you are into VR. If you haven't experienced it, it's a hard thing to truly bring across, and with that comes a lot of risk if it's something you're really going to be into. But I do think, look at the games that are already there. What games do you already have access to that are VR games as well? What games do you think actually kind of interest you in this wide lineup we already have? Do be aware that you aren't buying into something that's going to promise big AAA experiences every year like we've become kind of accustomed to with the mainline consoles. I do not think this thing's worth buying at full price. I don't think you should be paying the full amount to Sony when Sony itself isn't willing to really commit to the PSVR2 platform. We've seen the discount bringing it close to 300 quite a few times at this point, so if you have the patience, maybe hold out for that to then pick it up at that point. I don't really think it's worth buying full price in 2025. But ultimately, yeah, I do think this is a really underrated piece of tech, and there's some great experiences out there. Because it's overshadowed by the lack of first party, I think the PSVR2 gets a really bad rap when actually it is a great experience and it is really worth your time. I just don't want to convince somebody to buy into something that without being aware of the fact that it isn't a super well supported thing. You are relying on the third party games making their way to PSVR2 at this point. And it does beg the question, do you go for the Meta Quest instead, which can come in at a cheaper price and run on its own? It's a totally viable option, in all honesty. I'm reviewing this from the perspective as a PlayStation channel that you already have a PS5, so that additional purchase isn't there. But if you're coming to this without a PS5, maybe the Meta Quest is the right option. As someone that isn't quite sure but they want to try it out but they don't have a PS5, yeah, the Meta Quest might be worth it on its own. But if you're looking for that higher end experience and you already have a PS5, wait till that sale comes along and then jump right in from there. Just to add in a little bit of extra value there though, we do also now have compatibility with PSVR. You do need to buy this adapter and you're going to need a DisplayPort on your PC, but this is just another thread allowing you to use this headset to play some of the big hitters on other platforms like Half-Life Alyx. So anyway, I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, let me know down below. Also let me know if you agree with what I'm saying, or do you think, oh, the PSVR2 is 100% worth it, or actually don't touch it at all. Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, if you leave a like, that really does help us out. Even better if you subscribe to the channel. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Aaron, and this has been Push Square.